This is a comic book collection that I requested from the library for my kids, actually, not primarily for myself, although once it arrived, I thought, well, I might as well read it as well. Why not? And here I am with my review of sorts. So my kids have recently discovered Disney's Gummy Bears. Through me, of course. I recommended it to them while they were watching Disney Plus. I said, you guys might enjoy the Gummy Bears. And like any child of the 80s, I have some nostalgia myself for the Gummy Bears. Some. A limited amount. Actually, when the Gummy Bears came out, or at least when I discovered them, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade, which was just a little bit too old for the Gummy Bears. They were aimed at younger children. I think the ideal age to watch the Gummy Bears might be kindergarten or 1st grade. Other Disney afternoon cartoons were aimed at older kids. I mean, slightly older kids. So I enjoyed DuckTales and Chippendales Rescue Rangers and the rest of them when they came out, but the Gummy Bears were always a little bit more childish. Even though I really wanted to like it. I like the concept, like the character designs. I like the idea of a medieval fantasy cartoon. But yeah, I just could never get into them. But my kids are very young, so they've gotten into them a little bit, and I thought I'd search the library catalog to see if there were any Gummy Bear books that I could read to them at night, or maybe in an effort to get them to read a little bit more. And this came up in the library catalog, Adventures of the Gummy Bears. So I ordered it from the library catalog without really knowing anything about it. It turns out, though, that this is actually not primarily about the Gummy Bears. The cover and the title being a little bit misleading. But this is all Disney Afternoon books. Sorry, Disney Afternoon comics. And in fact, you can see here in the lower right-hand corner, the Disney Afternoon Adventures. So a little bit of searching on the internet reveals that this is actually Volume 4 in the Disney Afternoon Adventures, published by Fantagraphics. And Fantagraphics, I believe, is the same company that was republishing the Carl Barks Adventures, a couple of which I've talked about on this channel. So I guess I'm somewhat familiar with them. And yeah, it contains comics from Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Chippendales Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, kind of. There's a one-page Goof Troop comic, and Bonkers. And we can go over here to, sorry. Oh yeah. Where is it? This content was first created in 1986 to 1996. So content that was created right during the Disney Afternoon period. An interesting little note beneath this. These stories were produced during an earlier time and may contain cartoon violence, historically dated material, or gags that depict smoking and gunplay. We present them here with a caution to the reader that they may reflect the era in which they were made. Now, I guess this is one of those, oh geez, am I that old already moments. I mean, I'm used to seeing these kind of disclaimers, but I usually see them in like material from the 1920s or the 1950s, right? Stuff from my parents' or grandparents' generation. Here, this is something from years I lived through, and it's got this little introduction that is presenting it as like something from a dated time period that no longer reflects the way we live nowadays. And I think, well, 1996 wasn't that long ago, but maybe 1996 was that long ago now, huh? This title includes negative depictions and mixed treatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, blah, 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 blah. Now, this all sounds vaguely familiar. And I think actually Fantagraphics published almost the exact same disclaimer with the Karl Barks volumes I read. And those volumes actually were quite old, like from the 1940s and 1950s. So I wonder if this is just their standard disclaimer. I was reading through this trying to find any harmful stereotypes of people or cultures. I couldn't really find much. Certainly nothing direct, unless some of these cartoony stereotypes count. Like, I don't know, Don Carnage being presented as a stereotype of a French person, maybe. Or, at one point they go to like a Greek island. Does this count as a harmful depiction of the Greek people? I don't know. I don't know. But anyways, on to the comics themselves. So these comics all have in common that they are connected with the Disney afternoon, but they come from many different sources. Some of them originally published in Italy or Denmark. And perhaps you know, if you're familiar with Disney comics, that Disney comics generally, and I believe Donald Duck specifically, was very popular in the Scandinavian countries and was very popular in Italy. Like those comics were much more popular in Europe than they were in the US. So there's this whole European culture when it comes to the Donald Duck comics. Other of these were published in Disney Adventures, which I actually read in the early 90s. I don't think I was still reading them in 1994. I think I was reading Disney Adventures in the very early 90s. But yeah, at any rate, I don't recognize any of these comics from my old Disney Adventure collection. But they are all different comics by different creators from different magazines. They're all licensed Disney properties and all connected to the Disney afternoon, but they vary widely in terms of quality, interest, readability, etc. So it's a little bit hard to do much of a formal review on this, but I can flip through and comment on some of the things that interest me. You can see right off the bat that even though the art style does vary a little bit, like this art style is quite different than this art style, a lot of this has very colorful Disney animation. And I'm not sure how much of this is being taken right from the cartoon, but it's not great art, but it's classic Disney characters, very colorful. The drawings pop out. So visually, this book really pops. When it comes to reading the actual stories, well, it's got the nostalgia factor going for it. If you, like me, grew up in the era of the Disney afternoon, then you'll enjoy the nostalgia of this. The actual stories themselves can sometimes be a little bit plodding. I mean, they're kids' comics. But there are some moments. Really what you want from these Disney comics, you're not really expecting any very complicated plots or in-depth character studies. You're certainly not expecting anything interesting in the way of sex or violence or anything like that. But you might hope for whimsy, something lighthearted, something imaginative or comedic, and you get that sometimes. So the first one here is Gummy Bears, A New Beginning. And after all, it's a Gummy Bears on the cover here. And I think I recognize this story. I think this is the first Gummy Bears cartoon, or the plot of the first Gummy Bears cartoon, of which my kids watched recently, and I watched the first 5 minutes with them before I excused myself. I'm not sure how closely this follows the original cartoon, but I think this was definitely based off of the first episode of the Gummy Bears cartoon. Yeah, actually, for all the rest of these comics as well, I'm actually not sure how closely they follow. Sorry, I'm not sure which of these comics are actually new stories and which of these comics are actually just retellings of something that was already a TV episode. Presumably the temptation to just retell a TV episode must be much easier than coming up with a new story. But yeah, this one I recognized as being based off of a TV episode. The other ones I didn't recognize, but some of them might well be. Who knows? According to Disney Wiki I was looking at, this one I think was originally published in Europe, maybe, in Italy. It is, despite the very colorful and immersive looking Disney animation, this story is rather plodding, just to read as a story. But the animation is nice. Okay, then we go on to Goof Troop. Goof Troop is represented by just this single page comic, and that's all we get from Goof Troop for this issue, for this volume. But fair enough, really. I don't really, Goof Troop doesn't lend itself maybe to long form stories the way the rest of them do. It doesn't really have traditional bad guys in most of its episodes, as I remember. So, yeah, the conflict is not as built into the premise. So, anyways, next one is Darkwing Duck, Fluffy's Reign of Terror. I actually used to watch a lot of Darkwing Duck back in the day. I don't remember Fluffy. This comic is presenting it as Fluffy coming back. But maybe I just don't remember. There's Fluffy's Reign of Terror, and then there's some of the other villains, Darkwing Duck villains, show up, of which I clearly remember two of them, Megavolt and the Liquidator. I think his name was Liquidator. The plant guy I vaguely remember. Anyways, this comic is, again, a little bit plodding. The Darkwing Duck's battle with the cat just kind of seems to go on and on without making any progress until eventually the cat does get defeated. But yeah, it was all right to read. Bonkers, again, we only get one page of Bonkers, and that's all we get for this volume. But again, Bonkers, like Goof Troop. Well, no, Bonkers does have an inherent conflict set up in the premise, right? Bonkers and his partner have to catch bad guys. But anyways, we only ever get the one issue. And then Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, Legend of the Silverhorn. This is actually a decent story. For a kid's Disney afternoon story, this one was decently entertaining. Then it's also one of the longer stories. Then we get to a time travel magic story involving the Gummy Bears, where they steal a wand to travel around in time They find an ancient dinosaur magician, and there's a few transformations and bounces back in time. And this was pretty fun. I think this was my favorite story in the collection. This was a fun little story here. A tailspin story in which two goons get Baloo to try and track down their boss. It was an all right story. It had some whimsical moments in it. This one was okay. Let's go on to the next one. Oh yeah, another Gummi Bear story. This one involves them accidentally finding a dragon, who they go on a few brief adventures with. It's another short one, but this one was fun. A nice little whimsical story. One-page story of Darkwing Duck, and then we get a DuckTales story. It's a DuckTales story, but Donald Duck tags along on this one. He's on shore leave here, which is fitting because, of course, if you know your DuckTales history, you know that the DuckTales is based on the Carl Barks comics, which included Donald Duck. But for various reasons, the Disney company made the decision to sideline Donald Duck from DuckTales when they launched that cartoon in 1987 or whenever it was. I was just actually reading this and seeing Donald Duck come back and join the DuckTales gang. Renewed my curiosity about why did they sideline Donald Duck for DuckTales again. I knew I had looked it up on the internet once or maybe even twice before, but I didn't really remember the reason. So I went and looked it up again just now. Turns out it's a bit of an interesting reason. So when they launched DuckTales, they wanted to get 65 episodes in syndication. That was the magic number they needed to get in syndication. They were a little bit worried because some of their previous cartoons had been canceled. So Gummi Bears had been a hit, but Wuzzles, which was the other cartoon launched at the same time as Gummi Bears, that got canceled after only 13 episodes. So they decided to make a lot of DuckTales cartoons with a cheaper animation quality so they could crank as many of them out as possible before it got canceled and have the magic number for syndication so they could sell the syndication packages to TV stations even if the cartoon itself got canceled. You know, the politics of television. So because they were doing this on a lower budget and because they were cranking them out, they were worried about lowering the image of Donald Duck, who is, of course, one of Disney's main trademark characters. So they thought if he was associated with a lower quality production, it wouldn't be good for his image. Whereas the rest of these characters, I mean, Uncle Scrooge was fairly well known at the time, but Uncle Scrooge and the rest of them were mostly known through the comics at the time. Not nearly as well known as Donald Duck, at any rate. Plus, Donald Duck was notoriously hard to understand. Now, you know, usually Donald Duck is in an 8-minute cartoon, but if Donald Duck is in a 30-minute episode, 22 minutes without commercials, then they worried that the audience would get tired of having to trying to understand what he was saying. So for all those reasons, he got sidelined in the original DuckTales cartoon, but they brought him back for this comic. And if memory serves, he was an occasional guest star on the DuckTales cartoon. Anyways, this is a classic DuckTales tale. Gladstone has a treasure. Uncle Scrooge wants to find the treasure as well. So they have some sort of guidebook which leads them to an island, swimming through a passageway to a mysterious fantasy island type place where they have to defeat the monster and have various adventures. Interesting little note here while I'm talking about DuckTales related trivia. They're in the dungeon, and Donald Duck is upset because he's on his shore leave from the Navy to do this. In the DuckTales cartoon, Donald Duck goes off and joins the Navy, and that's why he's not around for their adventures. That was their excuse to get rid of him. So he's on his shore leave on this adventure, and so the whole time he's complaining about how he's on his shore leave here having a miserable time. So he says, I could have spent my leave fighting Gladstone over Daisy, hanging with Gyro, arguing with Fethry. So Gladstone and Gyro I recognized. Fethry, I was like, who is Fethry? And Launchpad said, Fethry's not here, but I can bust floors just like he can. So I thought, all right, look this up. Who is Fethry? So I Googled Fethry, and Fethry is from the Donald Duck comics, but he was apparently mainly in the European comics from the 1960s onwards, and didn't get like fully integrated into the U.S. Donald Duck comics until I think it was the 2000s. He made brief appearances in the 1960s. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And turns out that this comic was originally published in Denmark. And if we, jump back here to the title page, you can even see that they have translation on the credits here. Translation and dialogue. There's a couple comics in this volume, which apparently this is their first time being released in the U.S., first time being translated into English. So I guess, yeah, this is one of them. So there you go. There's a little bit of trivia for you. Although, according to one of the Disney wikis I was reading right before filming this, apparently in the original, this read Mickey Mouse, and they changed it to Fethry. I'm not sure if that was in the original Danish or the original English, or I don't know. But apparently in some versions it reads Mickey Mouse. Okay, so anyways. I misspoke earlier when I said there was only one Goof Troop page. We've got two Goof Troop pages. Another Tailspin adventure. This one was pretty fun. Little whimsical adventure here. And enjoyed this. And then Darkwing Duck, Hero for a Day. So the premise behind this is Darkwing Duck is trying to train Launchpad to become a hero instead of just being the sidekick. And Launchpad is miserable at it. He keeps fobbing everything. He's not cut out to be a hero in his own right, at least at the beginning of this comic. Now, this is a little bit of a strange pairing with the previous DuckTales comic, because in this previous DuckTales comic, Launchpad McQuack actually presents himself as some sort of action hero who knows all these action moves and is, more of an action hero than a cartoon character here. I thought this was not totally in line with Launchpad's characterization when I read it. To be fair to the comic, Donald Duck does try and talk him out of it. He says, "Better you than me, Launchpad. But have you flipped your lid? Flying Darkwing and Uncle Scrooge around doesn't make you a super snooper." Oh, by the way, according to one of the wikis I looked at, Super Snooper is also a reference. That was, I think, a In the Carl Barks comics, Super Snooper was a comic book character that either Donald Duck or his nephews like to read about. Anyways, so Donald Duck is saying, Launchpad, you're no superhero. But then, yeah, Launchpad has got moves. But then we transition over to this comic where Launchpad does not have any moves at all and is completely hopeless. And I know, it's a Disney cartoon. You're not looking for strict logical continuity or consistency necessarily in these characters, but it's an odd choice on the editor's part. I mean, usually we'd like to place these in separate books so the reader kind of has some time to forget about the previous adventure and forget. You don't want to call the reader's attention to these inconsistencies, right? So maybe that was an error in judgment, placing these two adventures with different portrayals of Launchpad right in the same volume. But I don't want to complain too much about it. This boy here, I forget his name. But if memory serves, he was only in like a couple episodes of the TV show. But I think he showed up more in the comics, right? Anyways, that's just another random observation. And then we get one more Gummy Bear adventure, which was, short, sweet, a little bit whimsical, kind of fun to read. And that finishes off the volume. And that is Adventures of the Gummy Bears, A New Beginning and Other Stories, a.k.a. the Disney Afternoon Adventures Volume 4. I wouldn't recommend you go out of your way to track this down if you don't have kids. But if you have some nostalgia for the Disney Afternoon, it's readable, fun to look at the pictures. I don't know. It's not terrible. Not terrible.